Hello, this is Francis Donlin,
Kenna DeMitz.
and this is our presentation on Pulp Fiction. We really didn't expect to be doing this over a video, so I doubt this was going to be formatted for that, but let's take a shot at it. So here's our thesis. Through Pulp Fiction and his other works, Quentin Tarantino revolutionized the aspect of the ensemble cast and created a trademark style of direction that has been mimicked by numerous directors in modern-day Hollywood. So you can see, like, in his movies that there's a lot of stuff that we're going to get into that's, like, really specific to only Quentin Tarantino. And then other directors have seen that and be like, hey, that's a cool thing, that, like, this content's specific to only this director. And so they want to do that, too, so they can be, like, famous or whatever you do in the director world. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So just a summary of the movie Pulp Fiction, if you're not familiar. The main characters, are Vincent Vega and Jules Winfield, and they're hitmen with a penchant for philosophical discussions. Their storyline is interwoven with those of their boss, gangster Marcellus Wallace, his actress wife Mia, struggling boxer Butch Coolidge, master fixer Winston Wolfe, and a pair of armed robbers named Pumpkin and Honey Bunny. So it's hard to determine a main character in this movie because it is the ensemble cast. So it's switching constantly between their storylines, which became something so popular in Tarantino's work, to have the non-linear storytelling that is featured so prominently in Pulp Fiction.
Exactly.
So a big part of it was the ensemble cast. There are several big-name actors in it. Some of the main characters are John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, even Steve Buscemi has a cameo in it. There's a lot of huge-name actors.
Yeah, there's, like, Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman, yeah. None of them are the clear lead, though. John Travolta is arguably the main character, but they all are.
He has the most screen time out of everybody, but it's hard to, like, pick out if there is a main character or what the hierarchy is for the characters, because there is none.
Yeah, it'll be in the middle of John Travolta's storyline, and then it jumps and spends a half an hour on Bruce Willis's character, who's a boxer, and John Travolta won't be in that part hardly at all.
And you're just left wondering, like, wait, what happened to the other story? And you're just kind of...
It bounces back and forth.
You want to know what happens. So that kind of keeps you into the movie.
Keeps you very intrigued, in what ended up being a very long movie.
I'd say, 2.5 hours. All right, so there are some Tarantino staples that a lot of people, I'm sure, if you've seen one of his movies, you've recognized it, or if you've seen multiple. There's, like, realistic and naturalistic dialogue, along with, like, intense scenes and lines.
So it'll switch back and forth between a really intense monologue of a character, and then someone will be fumbling over their lines to make it feel really real, bouncing back and forth between how different it is from real life.
Yeah, and it really gives, like, a realism effect that, like... You know, if you're talking with somebody in real life, they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to maybe stutter once or say the wrong word or mix two words up, and you hear that in the story because they want to add to the sense of realism, that it's not just a script that they're going off of.
And it contrasts so strongly with the next Tarantino staple, which is incredibly violent themes in all of his movies. He's known for having just way over-the-top gore in his movies.
And there's a lot of scenes, like even in this movie, there was a scene that really set me off because there was I don't know if we can say it, but there was a rape scene that really...
There was, yeah.
That really, it was interesting, and I wasn't expecting it.
It's a little out of the blue, it's rough.
And it feels like Tarantino is just kind of saying to the critics, like, do what you want, I don't care. This is my message, my story. And it's just kind of a big middle finger to the critics.
Definitely, yeah. Another thing that's in all of them, along with all the violence, is the protagonist of the film is usually kind of an antagonist. They're not good people in his movies. They never are. I mean, this one, it's about hitmen. And then Kill Bill is about a woman whose whole mission in life is to kill these, like, 6 guys. I mean, Glorious Bastards is a little bit more so. That one, they're fighting the Nazis in that one. They're arguably good guys, but still lots of murder in all of his.
Yeah. And so another staple he has is really the quote-unquote shaky camera walking shots where, say, you're walking behind a character and the camera will be shaking, as saying, like, somebody has a camera just mounted on their shoulder, not, like, on a tripod or something to sweep it. It's more, it feels like they're shoulder mounting it and they're just walking right behind it.
The packet called it tracking, I think. It definitely makes you feel like you're really a part of the story and there with them. And there's fourth wall breaks, kind of. There's a moment in Pulp Fiction where one of the characters kind of moves the camera guy so that he can get past him, and it really makes you feel like you're in the room with the characters. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and like before this, in other films, I haven't really seen many fourth wall breaks.
Yeah.
So like that could also be considered like one of his staples or one of the things that he started up and what other people wanted to follow. Another thing was like tie-ins and references to other Tarantino movies, such as like the Big Kahuna Burger and Red Apple Cigarettes. If you watch the movies, I'm sure you've seen a reference or two to those.
Mm-hmm.
And like other movie franchises, if you can see, they've taken that, because like even if you look at Marvel, their whole series is just a bunch of movies, and they have tie-ins to each of the other movies.
Yeah.
And there's so many other real world examples of what people did from Tarantino.
Yeah.
And there's also like in trunk shots. There's several of those alone in Pulp Fiction. Samuel L. Jackson just being casted has been a staple of Tarantino.
Yeah, he likes to work with the same actors over and over again.
Mm-hmm. And himself, like he always stars in his movies as well, in the movies that he directs or writes.
He puts himself in them one way or another.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's dance scenes which are with seemingly intentional quote-unquote goofs, again, to add to realism.
Yeah, with someone fumbling a line. And also, I don't know why he does it. I've looked into it a little bit, but there's no clear example of why, but he puts in continuity errors sometimes. Like, someone will be... someone's hair will be different shot to shot, but he says he does it intentionally, which is interesting.
And another thing that I didn't understand, but I found it, was close-ups of feet and of record play needle dropping.
Yeah.
I don't understand. What does Quentin Tarantino have with feet that's so important that you got to get close-ups of them?
There's something.
I guess. I'll leave that to him, because I have honestly no clue.
Yeah.
And there's some more about Tarantino's impact on it. Strong references to pop culture, not the seen before on the big screen. Like, there were several clips that were references to other movies. Like, Kill Bill, there's a reference to that. Or, more or less, Kill Bill is a reference to Pulp Fiction, because Pulp Fiction was made before. That one of the characters at one point has a samurai sword, or a katana.
And other than that, Uma Thurman's character in Pulp Fiction talks about her big pilot, which was her 15 minutes of fame, she was in the pilot for a show called The Fox Force 5 that was about this elite force of hot ladies, and then that ended up being kind of the plot of Kill Bill. Not really the plot, but it's definitely a big part of it.
It's like you can just see a lot of nods to like other stuff going on in the real world, and other directors really didn't do that. They were just looking at making a really cool movie that has this huge impact on people and just makes a lot of money. But Tarantino, he just wanted to make what he wanted to make, and then it's such good quality that other people wanted to follow along.
The rise in nonlinear storytelling after Pulp Fiction is just insane. The list of movies, there'll be like 5 before Pulp Fiction, and then afterwards there'll be like 30.
Yeah, like Pulp Fiction was really what set it off.
Yeah.
The whole non-linear storytelling aspect.
It's so interesting. It keeps you with the movie because you want to know what happened, and you don't know quite what order it happened. And that's what watching the movie the second time when we were doing the film analysis was so interesting, because it's like you know what was going to happen. In the very beginning, you just see Vincent Vega and Jules Weinfeld come back, and they're wearing completely different clothes, and someone's like, oh, what happened? And they go, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And you almost forget about it, and then that ends up being like the final...
Yeah, you don't find out about it until later.
Yeah.
Near the end. And there's a use of profanity and lack of censorship. I went off about this earlier, about how it kind of pushes the limits of movie language and footage. Again, like Quentin Tarantino telling the critics that they can do what they want. He doesn't care what they think. He cares about like what the audience thinks. And I guess the audience likes this.
It worked out for him. Yeah.
And, immense rise in nonlinear storytelling. And there's cultural impacts from resulting parodies. Say, Quentin Tarantino's movies were so popular, people made parodies off of them and like upload them to YouTube or stuff like that. Yeah. And then that increasingly grew Quentin Tarantino's popularity just through like exposure. Yeah,
there's a big scene in IFC had a mini series a couple years back called The Spoils of Babylon, where there was a whole like 2-minute scene that was just straight out of Pulp Fiction with Tobey Maguire's character when Vincent Vega was having his heroin trip. So his movies have had a pretty big impact. Everyone knows Tarantino, even
Yeah.
if they only know him for incredible violence and dark movies.
Even if you've never seen any of his movies, I'm sure you've heard Tarantino.
Yeah.
Like every once in a while, I'm sure you've heard somebody say it.
It's a name you don't forget.
Yeah, exactly. And then here are our sources. And thank you for your time watching this video. It's been a pleasure.